Detective Comics 1097, Tom Taylor writing with Lee Garbett on the art. Now, you may be initially upset because Mikhail Yanin's name's not there, but Lee Garbett's actually very, very good as well, so I wasn't actually that upset.
Yeah, Lee Garbett's very good. I quite like the art in this one. Going through and reading this week, I was like, man, I was telling my wife, it's going to be hard to pick art because there's a lot of good books and a lot of good art this week. But yeah, so I like Lee Garbett. And I thought, for whatever reason, it reminded me of Williamson's book, Nailbiter, but that's a different artist. That's Mike Henderson. And I thought maybe Lee Garbett and him had some crossover, but it's not. There's have very similar styles. But yeah, no, Garbett's very good. I, tipping my hand a bit, I quite like this issue.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about the issue. It's okay to admit it. There's no reason to hold back.
I don't want to get too much, but the aspect of Bruce going to Bullock, and we're getting Bullock's side of this, and it almost becomes like an old school detective story, and stuff's getting revealed with crooked cops and all of this. It's definitely a total shift with the Sema and stealing blood and stuff. So the fact that for Bullock it's about a bunch of dead kids and he wants to make it right, like there's that good person inside of Bullock, and he's bothered that this got out of hand, So I like that being front and center.
Yeah, this obviously we're diving into the elixir stuff which was teased in the previous arc. We get them, torturing someone who has information, and the mysterious guy who's kind of like here, Ambrose is his name, the one that we saw before. He's like, okay, we're pulling out of Gotham. Anyone who knows anything in the city needs to be taken care of, but don't send our people. Get like independent contractors to do it. So they're kind of covering their tracks and they're trying to pull away because like too many questions are being asked. The fact that Batman's even heard their name exists is like a problem for them. So they're like, no, we're pulling out, because he says, oh, we're not going to return to Gotham for at least the rest of the century, which is a pretty bold span of time to talk about. So that sets up kind of that stuff, and then like you say, we get to the Batman and Bullock stuff where they both just kind of run into each other at the crime scene, which they point out is kind of like, the crime has been solved. They have the murderer, but they're both bothered because there's more to it. And this is what gets into the whole, okay, this group elixir, Batman starts talking about it. And much to his surprise, and to, I think, the reader's surprise, Bullock has a bit of a lead on this. He's like, wait a minute, I think I've heard this once before. And we get a flashback story to when Bullock was a rookie, and he was with his older partner, and they went into a house to check on an old person. We find out later he's 112 or something ridiculous like that.
Oof, yeah.
But Elixir and what looks like a young Ambrose is there as well. They're torturing this guy, and they basically tell the cops, hey, like, you've not seen anything, on you go. And Bullock's not going to accept it, but the partner steps in and effectively saves his life, because these guys would have just killed him to cover the tracks.
Yeah.
So we find out from this old partner and sort of Bullock recounting the story that there was a time that at least some of the corrupt police maybe didn't know who Elixir were really, but they at least like were being paid off by them to look the other way when they were, caught doing certain things or getting up to stuff in Gotham. And this was like, Bullock's like rude awakening, having to accept this payout, and like, all the cops were dirty and all that. So Batman's like, I want to hire you. You've got leads that I don't. You're a PI now. Dig up any dirt you can. And obviously, I think there's some natural, like, sort of suspense here, because the opening scene of this issue was the villain saying, hey, anyone who asks questions, like, take care of them. So we know that Bullock's getting put in danger here. He's on a path to something bad if he's successful. So, it becomes a Bullock detective story. He goes to, question various people around the city, eventually going to his old partner and catching up with him. I think what's interesting about this scene with the old partner, who's retired and on a boat, is he's a corrupt cop, and he was a corrupt cop in the flashbacks, but he also kept tabs on the Elixir because he didn't really like what they were having him do either. So he kind of comes across as a bit more shades of grey by the end, as opposed to just a villain, which I thought was a bit more interesting than anything else.
And I was like, look, I could have taken the money or I could have taken the bullet, right? At least I could keep track of things because I'm still alive. So it did the crooked cop thing, but it did it in such a way where it didn't make him seem like that bad of a guy, right? So he still has Bullock's trust. So I do like that King, or not King, the other Tom Taylor is playing with that shades of gray aspect of it.
Yeah. So this plays out, and then some goons come to get Bullock at his office, and Bullock fights back, but is unable to do so. And this is right after he sent a message to the number Batman gave him, which seems to redirect to Oracle by the looks of it.
Yeah.
And afterwards, Batman goes to his office. It's been ransacked. He's missing, and it's like, oh shit, like, where's he gone? And it's like, oh, the security camera's putting them in this van. It seems like they're going to this plane. And it's like, so Batman's basically chasing and launching out of his bat plane to try and save Bullock. But the misdirect at the end, and we get a cool little action scene of him jumping into the top of this truck and like coming down and taking out the bad guys. He pulls the hood off the prisoner, and it's not Bullock. Bullock's whereabouts is unknown. Instead, under the sack is one Oswald Cobblepot, and that's the cliffhanger, is that somehow he's been tricked and he actually ended up with Penguin. But it is interesting, though, because I totally buy that Penguin probably knew too much about Elixir, and they're coming after him too.
That's the first time we saw Elixir, right? Was they were going and messing with Oswald.
Yep. It makes sense.
The first time we saw Ambrose. So yeah. There was parts of here too that I really liked before Bullock goes off.
Sure.
Right? And that's the in his story, the way that Taylor and Garbett just show you enough of what they did to this 112-year-old man with like the fish hooks in his eyes and the skin pulling, but you never get a full picture of it. And it makes it that much more unnerving. So it takes Elixir from the shadowy group that's responsible for these kids' death to like, what kind of monstrosities are they doing? Like what type of people are they dealing with that would do this to a 112-year-old man? Like, and yeah, it just gave it this weird horror vibe, almost like body horror, and not quite Reanimator, right? But something along those lines. And it has me asking more questions of like, at first I thought maybe they're vampires, but like, what are they stealing? Are they stealing life force? Because if this guy was 112, right, were they investigating to see like what part of his DNA? And if that's the case, if this was all those years ago when Bullock, who we have to assume is older, right? Not quite as old as Gordon, but older than Bruce, when he was a rookie, like what were they onto way back then? So just one little scene has added so much, Well,
one thing to keep in mind here is the entire last plot was about stealing blood from young people to keep people living longer. So it's not like it's a stretch to think that they're doing something along those lines. I also just really like in the art here, like just things that we see all the time are presented in a different tone, just to sort of fit the vibe, the sort of darker tone of the book. Because like when you first see Oracle, it goes to her and she's in silhouette against the clock tower and everything's green. It just has a bit more of an ominous vibe, even though there's no reason to make her seem ominous, but it just makes everything feel a bit, like we're doing covert stuff, we're doing spy stuff, we're getting into the dark side of Gotham, or not even Gotham, but just stuff it's mostly stuff outside of Gotham, really, that's invading Gotham.
And I also feel like we never get a good view of Batman, right? Like a couple with Bullock, but even that on that page where you talk about with Oracle on the side, when he swings through to go after the van, his face is all in shadow. So it adds that whole everything, a very mysterious
it's this
vibe to everything. And then
same when he's jumping on the truck as well. Like all the stuff on that page is all the faces all in darkness and silhouette and all that.
And then the opposite of that is that when you turn the page and Oracle's there looking at her screen and you're getting the reflection in her eyes, and she takes up like the lower, is that 2/3 of the page, and it's just such a different vibe than what we've gotten. It's like this extreme close up that's very clear. So just to show that she's how involved she is with this part of it too. There's a lot of cool storytelling going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's that moment in like a movie where someone's sitting at a computer screen and you're just getting the reflection of the screens on their face. It just feels very intense, like they're really locked in and helping with whatever's going on. Yeah, no, it's good stuff. And the cliffhanger is an interesting one. Like you say, it makes sense based on Penguin's like small appearance in the previous arc. So there's a lot of long form storytelling going on here, where even though this arc instantly feels like it's got a different tone, there's a lot of things that were set up for it in the first one. So you know, it's good stuff. Like I mean, it's Taylor doing another long form story like he's Nightwing, although the tone of it entirely is very different than he's Nightwing, which is nice. So cool. And like we say, Garbett's art is very good. It a very different tone, and obviously we're saying this the story's a bit darker in tone in general, which is saying something given that the last story had like children or teenagers being killed. But this just feels a bit more sinister, and I think that's the point: is they want the elixir to feel scarier, to feel like they're the big bad force that Bruce hasn't taken on before. So really neat stuff. So what are you rating Detective Comics?
I'm going to do 8.5.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. 8.5.
I thought you might go a little bit higher. That's why I'm like, is he gonna go? But no.
No, I think I'm happy with 8.5. I think there's room for it to grow, but I think it's at a very excellent level right now.